That's good. Now, I'll just go into play the slideshow. Can everyone see that? Okay, tonight I'm going to talk to you about the landscape amplified. You'll understand more what this title means as we go through the talk. This is a journey into beautiful photography, and it's something close to my heart because it's landscape photography with subtle differences. And you'll pick that up very clearly tonight. We're going to look at least 3 different aspects of how we amplify the landscape in different ways and how we can look at a scene totally emotionally and try to change the way that we actually see the world. Now, what does amplify mean? We often think about it as a microphone, don't we? But the word actually means to enlarge upon or add detail to, like in a story or a statement. For instance, we could say this: the notes amplify information contained in a story or statement. So whatever we say adds to that or amplifies that. So there's synonyms like expanding, enlarging upon, or elaborating on, to flesh out or to add detail to embroider, to supplement, to augment, to reinforce. The notes amplify information contained in the story or statement. So think of it when we look at a photograph, or we look at a scene that we want to photograph. How can we best tell the story of what we're looking at? And that's what I mean by the landscape amplified. Now, the heart of photography has very little to do with cameras and technology, even though some tech heads will tell you otherwise. The heart of photography is the elements, the obvious elements of a photograph, which include the subject, the time, and the light. And sometimes in our photographic journey, we need to look beyond those 3 things. We need to look beyond the subject that we're photographing. We need to look upon past the time of it, and also the light. Landscape photography is largely perceived as being about making images of particular places, such as the Highlands of Scotland here. We should want to achieve more than merely ticking a box, for instance. So when we travel, we become a travel photographer. Do we just have a box? Yes. Been up to Bicali Edithmore, I've shot that stream, I've done this, I've done that. And it's more than just saying that we have an image of a particular place. And yes, I've done that. I can add that to my collection. And, you know, even if we go to a famous place and we took that photograph in the best light, there's got to be something more than just doing that, than just ticking boxes. We might also have to stop thinking about our photography. And here's another one, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way at all, but too many of us just shoot for our competitions. We get that list at the beginning of the year and we go, now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shoot for all these competitions that the club's holding this year. So whether it's club level or even right up through to international level, we need to start thinking about photography for us, what it means to us emotionally, rather than just ticking boxes and rather than just shooting for competitions. You see, as an artist, it would be wonderful most of the time to just simply photograph for our emotions and our well-being, because we just love it. Now, there was a big article on the ABC today about how the green spaces in our life, how just being in a forest gives us a positive attitude and can actually lift our mood. And really, as photographers, wouldn't that be a wonderful arsenal to add to that already, to just go out there because it lifts our spirits, because we just love doing it. And then we come home and we've been out in beautiful places at different times of the day. Maybe we've seen the dawn light. Maybe we've seen the mist come down on the cliffs. This childlike wonder that we develop for the colours and for the textures and the forms that the world offers us in like an artist's palette. And it should motivate us to be out there as much as we can, just to love it. Every time I see a misty photograph, every time I see the pastels of light, every time I see the sky just raw with cloud formations, every time I see crepuscular rays, we just keep looking and looking and looking And then we need to look for more. Perhaps a wonderful goal could be to make an image with your subject rather than of your subject. This requires a very personal approach to whatever we're shooting. Something of feelings, one that inspires, one that arouses. This process then is a kind of an internal dialogue with the landscape in front of us. For instance, when we make an image, it's not about consulting a mental list and having a list in front of us saying, now, have I included ambiguity in this photograph? Is it beautiful enough? Is it simple enough? Is it too cluttered? Really, as good photographers, passion and instinct should take over. And then afterwards, we can ask ourselves, did that image work? Did it not work? What could I have done to give it that more beautiful feel, that more impassioned feel, and that more full of emotional that should come back right at us? The landscape beyond the obvious is all about the expansion of these three things, and we're going to look at them tonight. Simplicity in our photography, the world of the simple. Is there enough mystery in the world? Could perhaps our photographs enhance that a little bit? And of course, overall, we love the world. There are many beautiful places in the world. Does our photography amplify that beauty? Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so tonight the three main things are simplicity, mystery, and beauty. And next time the light is magic, the next time everything looks good, let's take a look at our photography and take it to the next level and look for the magical qualities. First of all, I'm going to look at the amplification of beauty. Ernst Haas once said that beauty pains, and when it pained most, I shot. Isn't that an interesting statement? So I know we often hear the expression, that is achingly beautiful. And I know that if we stand in front of a dawnscape or a sunset or something that's got just those beautiful subtle colours in it, we can say that this is just so beautiful. And that's why Ernst said, beauty pains, and when it pains most, I click the shutter. Fascination with the subject and finding beauty in the world around us is the motivation of most of us. Most photographers could actually say that. And this childlike sense of wonder, whether it's wildlife, whether it's people that we love to shoot, or whether it's just the landscape, it is all linked in with expressive photography. From wonder grows a desire to do the subject justice, to reveal to others how you feel about a subject, and perhaps to make feelings clearer and deeper to yourself. Most of us will have had that eureka moment, and that comes from Ansel Adams, when an image appears to sing, when it appears to be much more than just another photograph. This magic is inexplicably linked to the sense of beauty that every human has. It's inbuilt into us. It's an innate sense. The more we photograph for the sheer pleasure, the more eureka moments we will likely have. And as I mentioned, Ansel Adams talked about his 12 epiphanies. Yes, as good as Ansel Adams was, he said there was about 12 times in the year when an image was just pure magic, when there was a kind of alchemy at work. And that magic, he said, every time I looked at the magic of that image, it was always, always linked to beauty. For us as photographers, this search for mysterious beauty is also a search for the wellspring of our passion for image making. This quality is both the motivator and an essential part of any truly great photograph. And just looking through these were not only beautiful moments in when I pressed the shutter, but they were epiphanies for me. And many of them are not only here in Australia, but around the world, where I just see light and beauty coming together, and time, and creating magical moments that, you know, that I will take these memories to my grave. And I'm sure all of us will have these magic moments, and we will relive them. We will relive those moments every time we look at them again and again. Isn't it ironic then that beauty, which humans crave in so many aspects of our lives, whether it's the people that we love, it's the things that we look at, it's the objects we collect, the paintings that we acquire, the photographs we take, often is considered with disdain in the world of art, and it has been for nearly a century. I am not a mad fan of modernism, and I find that over-eager modernists see art as purely intellectual rather than aesthetic. And many artists want to shock us today rather than lift our spirits. If you need to have the maker explain what it is that they've created in front of you, what's the point of that? And how many times do we go and we go, what was he trying to get at, or what was she trying to get at, when we especially see modern art? The problem is, and it's not always the case, I don't want to make a blanket statement here, but often the continuous search for novelty and shock in the art world has led to a dead end, and it's basically become wearisome to the soul. Landscape photography, in my view, and then really should be, although it's an art, it should be a world apart from any other art forms. And if a photograph we take doesn't lift the spirits of the viewers that we show it to, then, and it doesn't lift our spirits when we're there in front of that scene, should we really bother to press the shutter? A brush with beauty can be personal, just us there and just our thoughts, or it can be universal. We can want to share it with so many other people. And you know, that real beauty that we see at the time of pressing the shutter can have a powerful effect on our viewers as well, in either a positive or a negative sense. Robert Adams once said that the beauty that concerns me is not that of form. He said, in my view, beauty is a synonym for the coherence and structure of the underlying world or life. And why is form beautiful? He said, because I think it helps us meet our worst fear, the suspicion that life may be chaos and that therefore our suffering is without meaning. Quite a lot in that statement, isn't there? This beauty is relative. It's a quality, not a quantity. Isn't that interesting? It's a quality. Beauty is a quality, not a quantity. And some will find it in one or two images or in a particular image, and others won't find it there at all. This deeper expression of beauty is not superficial appeal, but reveals truths about the world. And it evokes an emotion. And those emotions can be one of happiness or one of sadness. Whatever it is, though, it forces us to look. And isn't that what we want from the images? If we take a beautiful image in our view, isn't that what we want our viewers to see? And if it does then have a cause to arouse a different passion or a different view, one of either happiness or sadness, isn't that a reaction? And certainly a different reaction from someone is probably a good thing, because we're not all made of the same stuff. So wherever we go, we take beautiful photographs, we can love them. And if we love them a lot, then maybe a few people that look at them will love them as well. So we're sharing the joy and the passion of how we view the world with other people. The next one I want to talk to you about is the sense of mystery. Oscar Wilde, there was a character. He once said, the true mystery of the world is the visible. Interesting, hey? The true mystery of the world is the visible, not the invisible. The world loves mystery, especially in art. And one of the most wonderful painters that I take great delight in looking at time and again, and I've got some of his works in books, was Joseph Turner. And he was an absolute master of the mysterious. One of the things that he was amazingly good at was sfumato, which is an Italian word that is used to describe the softly blended light and the shades that are in paintings. And he was a true master of this. This Sumato effect is credited with giving some of Turner's work their unfathomable quality. And it's also come to mean something ambiguous, something even hazy, smoky, something that we quite can't see through. And so that air of mystery draws the viewer in and holds our attention. You see, the mystery is purely visual, but it conjures up thoughts in the viewer. And that's something wonderful that we can create in our photography. Let's have a look at a couple of Turner's works very briefly. And each one is full of light, it's full of colour and texture and effects, but it has this Sumato, this beautiful, beautiful air of mystery to it. And it didn't matter almost how much he brushed it and he worked that mystery in. We are drawn into those beautiful, beautiful paintings. We want to see whether he's done Rembrandt lighting, whether he's done bright colours. There's that sense of mystery there. And we look and we look and we continue to look into those paintings because that Sumato effect has intense mystery about it, and we are drawn in as viewers. So I'm really taken with his work, and I kind of apply that to some of my photography because I think this ambiguity, this mystery, this smokiness, this Sumato is a real good effect in photography. It's a type of beauty. It amplifies the ordinary scene, really amplifies it to a next level. Okay, one of the problems with photography, other than painting that we've just seen with Joseph Turner, is its recording power. There's nothing like a photograph. It takes everything. What photography does supremely well is explain the space photographed. Multitudes of tone, multitudes of colour, they're all easily captured on the digital surface, and they're almost technically perfect, too perfect in many instances. And when a photograph becomes too perfect, it sometimes loses its ability of being able to convey that sense of beauty. You see, too much emphasis on this technical perfection produces dispassionate results. Photography's biggest problem is its illustrative power. If we're not careful with how we create an image, we can end up with a photograph that has no mystery at all, it has no intrigue, and it ends up just another capture of reality. And really, there's a billion pictures taken every day, and many of them are just too realistic. And we want to deviate from that a little bit in our photographic endeavours. Now, reality's got its place, but as artists with passion and feelings, there should be a search for much more than that. When a photograph is truly great, it's often because it fails to fully explain everything within the space of the frame. Now, unlike modernist paintings, we do understand what the author's getting at, but it doesn't explain 100%. It might explain 70 or 80%, and it's encouraging you, the viewer, to look at it more closely, more deeply, and maybe draw your own conclusions. See, what we need with photographs are mystery, ambiguity, and deception. So let's look at a couple of examples. I deliberately took these photographs to do those three things. Think about this for a moment: mystery, ambiguity, and deception. Number one, mist rolling off sea cliffs with the sun just poking its head through the mist. A misty day in the forest where you can't really see through the scene, so you're drawn to the shapes and the texture and the silhouette rather than the whole frame. A beautiful picture of stacked perspective, mountains after mountains after mountains with lots of light. Spatial ambiguity, mystery, beautiful. Another misty forest scene, we can't see through the back. A beautiful pond with reflections and the mist rising with the dawn coming. So there are certain techniques we can use to help us introduce this sense of mystery into our photographs. You see, something half glimpsed in the shadows will stay in the mind far longer than something seen in the stark reality of full daylight. Isn't that interesting? If we don't know 100% what the photo is about, We look into it longer. We're quite mesmerized by it, even if it's a few seconds. And then that stays in our mind. And often when we're taking photographs like that, we are more aware of our surroundings because we really want to photograph it the way we see it. And so I love to get up in the dawn light, particularly when it's misty, and shoot this kind of ambiguity, this kind of mystery. It's beautiful. And all these photographs convey that sense of mystery and ambiguity. And sometimes we can do it less, and sometimes we can do it more. And it's all about mixing the light and creating a sense of mystery as well. Let's move on to scale for a moment. A scale is a portion of the landscape and not a section of detail. It's a deliberate attempt to change the proportions into almost an abstract. A self-supporting image, we know that time and space continue outside this frame, but our minds do not have a longing for any description of them. So we know this is a closed landscape almost. The sky is just a glimpse. So we've got all this gorgeous texture happening to us in Iceland in the winter, and our eyes are drawn to that texture, and we're happy with that because we can see beyond it a little bit. We don't need to have it fully explained to us. And a lot of photographs are beautifully done like this. If we think about it, you don't need to explain the whole scene to your viewer if you can do this, a sense of scale. Here's another one, a gorgeous scene of a frozen creek and a hint of the far bank. Our eyes are drawn to the textures and we get a glimpse of the water underneath the ice. There's enough information for us there to be happy with that image without going beyond. We don't need the full space explained. So thinking about a sense of scale will give us that ambiguity, will give us that air of mystery. Here's another one, a deliberate photograph of a curve in the road. So we don't know where the curve goes anyway. The mist has come in and shrouded that even more. So we don't see the end of the fence lines. We don't know what's beyond the trees, but it's enough. What we've provided the viewer with is enough information. They're happy with the context of what they're seeing. Mystery and ambiguity is all there, and it creates beauty in its own right. And here's another few examples that I'll just go through. We can photograph texture and shape and lines to be the main emphasis as a sense of scale to create a sense of mystery almost everywhere we go to take a photograph. And the viewer will be filled with senses. They don't need to know the full story to be happy with what they're seeing within the frame. One of my favourite things is spatial ambiguity, and that's the suggestion of something other than what was photographed. We're looking at a picture now. Who sees a human face there? The human mind's very good at finding outlines within complex patterns, finding faces, for instance, where none exist. Here's another one. Who sees the gorilla sitting there? You can just see the outline of his huge face and his head, and he's just sitting there. It's a picture of a cliff, but there's a huge gorilla sitting there. Here's another one. Who can see the face on the cliff there? Spatial ambiguity. Isn't it beautiful? It's amplifying the landscape in a different way. Here's Dog Rocks in the Devon Moors. You can see one's called Hound Tor in the bottom right there. I mean, it looks like a hound, doesn't it? Doesn't have to be told. And there's human faces, dog-like faces in the upper left. Who can see the outline of a face? One of my kids said that's Homer Simpson in the clouds there. Here's another one. Who can see a huge monster with an eye and a mouth leaning down towards the landscape in the cloud there? The next one from spatial incongruity is incongruity on its own. This is where an image prompts us to ask in our mind, how did that come about? It's all about intrigue, and it closely follows that of mystery. So everyone looks at that and goes, how did that hole get there? Who cares? We're photographing incongruity, and we want the viewer to ask a couple of questions. Now, we can deliberately create incongruity, putting, simple thing like putting a lounge chair on an old track.
In progress.
But how much better if we can find it in nature? Could I'll just ask everyone to turn their microphones off, please. Thank you. So finding incongruity in nature is much better. And, we can do that often with just the use of a long lens to compress what we call compressing the foreground. And another term is we use stacked perspective, whereby we go, how does that happen? How do you get clouds and icebergs all happening at the same time? And that's a simple one. That's just by compressing detail. With images like this, we're not asking people to answer a complicated quiz. We're just asking people to be drawn into an image that's a little more out of the usual, to see something out of the ordinary and everyday. And then they can build a story themselves around it. What we're doing in a different way is amplifying the landscape to one of mystery, to one of ambiguity, and even to a sense of scale. Something a little different, something out of the box. And everywhere I go in the world, I look for that. I try to photograph in such a way as there's something different about this photograph. It's not going to win any awards, but it's beautiful in its own right. And oftentimes we need to do that for the sake of our own passion and for the sake of our own sanity. I love the way that we can overemphasize foregrounds of just texture to create a story. And I do this all the time, as I said, when I travel, to really look at the world in a different way, to amplify the landscape out of the ordinary, out of the commonplace. We can also amplify the landscape using long exposures, because what we're doing, we're taking the motion of minutes and we collapse it into an instant of viewing the image. And in that compaction, it's a different kind of reality. And some people love it and some people hate it. But if you do it for the right reasons, compacting minutes into just an instant of viewing, it changes the way we see nature. It changes the very landscape. It could be a long exposure where we compact the clouds into a beautiful blur, or it could be just a few seconds where we tone down the agitation of the water to give it a moodier or a more mysterious feel. And I often do that. It's just a matter of a few seconds to slow down the water and to give that beautiful feel of mystery, ambiguity, and the amplification of an ordinary landscape. I don't belong to the 400 club where they just spend, an hour with all the stacked filters to just freeze everything, to just blur everything. I just love it for a particular reason, to slow down the world, to give us a different feel. Maybe it's a closer connection with nature, and it makes us feel at peace with the world. And sometimes we can do lots and lots of images and stack them together to give a beautiful mystery within the image like that. The collapsing of minutes into single frames heightens our sense of beauty. It heightens our sense of mystery, and it gives us an extra dimension of intrigue in our photographs. And it elevates our perception of the real world into one of pure art. And so the long exposures can often do that. It elevates it from just another pure visual reality check into one of being more artistic. And the third one I want to look at tonight is the essence of simplicity. You heard the old saying, KISS, keep it simple. Well, sometimes simplicity evokes more than that's actually there, because we define or diffuse the elements down into a few basic lines and shapes. Leonardo da Vinci, I'm going right back now, a few hundred years, he said, translated, of course, that simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. Genius, a genius painter, a genius of a man, inventor and scientist. And he said simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. We often liken photography to art or painting, and the problem is there's a big difference. One is an additive process. So if you're a painter, you get a blank canvas, you put it out. It's the ultimate simplicity. And then you take a brush and you put one stroke on it, and then you start working as a painter or an artist towards complexity. Now, photography is subtractive, because when we take a photograph, particularly in this digital world, it's ultimate complexity. And then we, as the artist in us, the photographer in the world around us, we have to work towards simplicity. So it's completely opposite to painting, even though it's an art form. See, the painter's got the perennial temptation. Add one more stroke, and then the trick of knowing when to stop adding, because the picture's finished, doesn't need any more. For the photographer, it's the other way. The most important decision is when to stop excluding. All those images write themselves in unbelievable detail in our drives, our flash drives. And then we have to take that into our software. We have to extract the important parts of the image from an apparent chaos in the world, and to avoid drowning in details. Photography then, for us as photographers, is to separate the wheat from the chaff. So we all have to learn, and myself included, continually hone that skill of simplicity. The process of making a photograph seems simple enough. Pick up a camera, insert a card, and start shooting. But, you know, it seems easier to other visual arts like painting or drawing. But this apparent simplicity is an illusion, because the best photographers have secrets, and one of them is working towards simplicity. See, how do you easily solve the complex process of simplifying reality? But solve it we must if we want to achieve meaningful results with our images. To be simple has an obvious negative meaning, and it has a few pejorative connotations too. You know, if we say someone is simple, or, oh, that's simple, goodness me, that's so simple, we could mean unsophisticated, superficial, shallow, and well, it's not really true even. But simple can mean other things. It's like we take the word complex or complexity. When we say that on its own as a word, we could often think of sophisticated, serious, very deep. Maybe it's truth. But have a look at this. Turn it round. Simple could actually mean easy, unadorned, elegant even, essential. There's a good word, essential. Simple, essential. Clear. Can't get clearer than that. Can't get more simplified than that. And complexity then can take on these pejorative values. Complex could be, it's too difficult, it's embellished, it's messy, it's unrefined and confused. So see how we can turn the words round to suit us as photographers. That's why we need to be positive in our values with simplicity. So let us start to learn to be easy and unadorned and elegant and essential and clear in our message when we take photographs. There's a clear message for you. It's sand dunes, and the leading line takes you to the back. Here's another simple one, basically tidal patterns with beautiful seashells in the foreground. However, the viewer is taken on a little journey to those tide lines. We could add a little bit more detail in, still keep it very simple. A few little tufts of beach grass, more shells, beautiful and simple, classy. Maybe it's just a few dots of foam on the sandy beach with the hint of the tide receding. Maybe it's just the sand patterns themselves, but there's beauty in that. It's unadorned, it's elegant, doesn't need to have any more to say about it. And even when we go up into the snow, maybe it's just the one tree or the shadows and the fence posts that give us that beautiful defining moment. Also considering that when we take these beautiful, elegant, simple photographs, that we think about line and space and leading lines particularly to draw the viewer in. Simplifying huge expanses and softening colours is going to add exquisite simplicity to our landscapes. Look at this of Loch Lomond. Look for something to lead the eye in. So when I was photographing this, to me, it was all about the space and the colour and the beautiful subtle hues, but I needed a leading line. And so the old pier did that. Here it was just a division of 2/3 and 1/3, and that beautiful pastel tone throughout. Here the leading line takes me past the stump and out to the background, keeping it very, very simple. You see, everyone, simplicity in photographs will still contain balance and form, because if we don't have those, we lose ourselves, we lose the subject, we lose what we're trying to aim for. Photographers need to simplify what's in front of the camera in order to achieve clarity. And there are three main aspects to simplification, and I'll tell you them now. Firstly, we have to remove unwanted clutter from our frame. And we can do this. Everyone can do this in software. Run our eye, or we can do it when we're looking through the frame. Run our eye around the outside of every photograph we take. Make sure there's no unwanted breaks on the edge of the image that might lead the viewer's eye away from the subject. So if you've got a tree in the background, make sure there's negative space there. We need to clearly understand space. If the subject is the focus point, then make sure that it's not obstructed by something else, or that there's something else not competing for the attention. So in this image, we have a simple photograph of the lighthouse, but the main subject was the clouds. So we have got a leading line through that up to the clouds. And thirdly, we simplify to help the viewer concentrate on the subject. Now that sounds very basic, doesn't it? But surprisingly, you know, guys, this is not done nearly enough. I see a lot of pictures as a judge, and they don't concentrate on the subject. What attracts us emotionally in the first instance is what we should end up with. So if something catches our eye, then frame the shot so that we've still got that in the frame, but the eye is drawn to it as the viewer. To help simplify your compositions, ask yourself what is the least interesting part of the image before you press the shutter. Identify the weakest area within the frame and find a way to get rid of it. That's easy. Now, once that's done, here's the hard bit. Repeat the process and do it again and again until there's nothing left that you could possibly cut out without losing something vital. Now, I know a lot of us want to get everything in, and I'm guilty of that too, so don't worry. This talk has come about because I've really analysed what I love about photography and the subtle differences in my photographs and what I look for in many instances. And I'm telling you this, the more you can refine your process, and if you get to a scene and something is catching your eye, then work around that subject. Here, down in Cornwall, St. Michael's Mount, I mean, it's a beautiful subject, but what caught my eye at low tide was the walkway. So I wanted a sense of place, but the walkway was it. So I refined everything down until that walkway was the center of attention. Amplify the part with the most texture and form. And you'll see in all these photographs that I'm showing you now, that the way to highlight the most graphic parts with our frame is to fuse down the textured lines and shapes, leaving plenty of negative space. So if I just go back, leave plenty of negative space in the photograph. Don't crowd it out. Here, see, plenty of negative space. Don't crowd the sky out, because that's what it was. Here we've got the moon and we've got the silhouette in the dawn light. There's plenty of negative space around it, and it still makes a gorgeous photograph. leave plenty of negative space. It is so important. If it's a continual refinement, and it usually will be, it's always good to remember your compositional strengths. Okay, so that is shape and texture and leading lines, the suggestion of thirds, the golden mean, the S curves and C curves. And if we think about all our strengths and weaknesses with regard to compositional elements, then every photograph we take will be strong. If we look for our compositional strengths and simplify that by identifying the strongest form or subject and just leave everything else out of the picture altogether, then we're well on the way to amplifying the landscape in the best way possible. And just to give you a few more instances of that is these two photographs there. And just to finish off the talk, Elliot Erwitt once said that, to me, photography is an art of observation. It's about finding something interesting in an ordinary place. And he said, I found it's got little to do with the things we see, and it's got everything to do with the way we see them. Isn't that a wonderful statement? So as photographers, it's the way we see the world, and how are we going to amplify our landscape next time we go out in the wide world. Now, just before I go, because I've got another 5 minutes, would you like to see, even during COVID, I've been able to get out a little bit, and I've just got 30 images. I mean, I've got a lot more than that I took, but I'd like to show you what I've been doing. Would you like to see what I've been doing in the last 6 to 8 months?
Yes, please, Ian.
Good. All right, so I'll just run through a few of these for you. So I called this Chasing the Light in 2021, and I'll just give you a little taste of some of the stuff I've been chasing in the last, what I call the COVID year. So I went to the Grampians a couple of times, and that's Lake Fynes at dawn. There's another one of Lake Fynes at dawn. There's Lake Fynes at sunset. There was a storm brewing over the Grampians, so I raced to find a little pond, and it was half filled with water, but the colours in the sky were just beautiful. So I shot a big panorama there, and that was the sky looking out towards my left side. So I was able to grab that as a photograph as well with a long lens. And then one morning I got up at the Grampians, and I went to one of the creeks there, and the light was just superb. So I grabbed a couple of lovely shots there. Went down into the middle. I don't know if anyone's been to what they call Paddy Castle. It's right in the middle of Victoria Valley. It's a gorgeous spot for photography. Also, when I went back to do the wildflowers, they were all out, and that's looking over to Lake Wartook. And then up in the Barocca Lookout, there was another big, massive storm brewing, so I managed to get a panorama there. Okay, another trip we did was up to Sea Lake, to Lake Tyrrell, and I was lucky enough to go out at dawn, and I was the only one there, and it happened to be a beautiful dawn, so I went like a madman for half an hour and ran between different places to get these gorgeous driftwood shots with the lovely dawn light coming on them. And then I went back in the middle of the day to get a water one. And then in the evening, because there was a storm brewing, and I thought, well, I'll get a couple of storm ones. Okay, then we're up in the high country, and we did a little trip into southern New South Wales, and this is up in the Monaro High Plains. Another massive storm was coming. So I'm out there in the middle of a sheep paddock photographing rocks and storms. I'll just show you a couple of those. And then we went into Kosciuszko National Park, and there was another storm coming. This one's at Rainbow Lake. And we were hurrying in and out and around like Rainbow Lake because my wife thought it was going to storm, and I said, no, I've got plenty of time. And we did have plenty of time, but you can see it's building and building and building. It was just amazing. Then Lake Jindabyne was full, 101% full of water. It was going over the spillway, and I went out one evening and just found the old track that I knew was there, and shot a couple of shots of that, which was beautiful. Then we ended up in Corryong, and this is an evening shot of the beautiful hills. Reminded me a little bit of Tuscany. Just someone's dam, a farmer's dam. I raced in and shot the evening light there one afternoon too. And of course, the cattle were just looking beautiful in the evening light. And then I've done a little trip down to South Gippsland, which I love. And this is the Dumborg Hills. And there was another storm brewing. And from there, there's Leongatha, the beautiful town of Leongatha, and all the beautiful pasture land and cropland panorama there. And then up in the Tura Hills, photographed another storm coming. And I called the cows to come up, and they did. They're very obliging creatures. Got them all in a line, and then they decided they were bored with me, so only a couple stayed to say hello. And the storm actually went round us. So there you go. So that's what I've been doing in the last few months.